So your next of kin or whoever is your emergency contact, you will have a corporate version of. When you're in trouble, the chance of you phoning your office before your next of kin is unlikely, because the first number that you'll remember will be that person, so your mum or your husband or wife or whoever. So that number is stuck in your head. It's going to be the first one. You're not going to remember the travel team's telephone number, and your phone's gone in your handbag. So what information you give corporately, you would need to decide internally. But if you have a work phone that you're taking with you, which I would suggest you all do, the passwords on that your office will have anyway. So it's giving them the ability to unlock everything that you owned before. Bank details, absolutely not, unless you have a work bank card, which again most of you will have. It's getting all of those things replaced as quickly as possible so that you can either continue with your trip or you can get out. So it is confusing. The password, that's a personal thing. And if your other half doesn't have your password anyway, you probably shouldn't be doing whatever you're doing on that device. So, but I would balance that out corporately and work out what is for the corporate and what is for personal. Not. So what you do is the moment you get it and you've got into your room, you call whoever has all of that data and give it to them, because it's your safe zone. Because they will always be able to find you there if you've gone off reservation, and if you're not there, somebody else can access. So it means that if your passport is in the safe, if you can actually call the hotel as the travel manager and say, listen, could you go and check their room? They haven't checked in for 3 days. Which you may find somebody in the room or not, but it gives you a first point. It's about using the correct chain through the political system and making sure that the individual is known to be highly important. So even if it's a travel document, it doesn't need to be a full passport. It is a way to repatriate that individual. And if you can do that through the correct channels and do it through the airlines, it's getting that person out, depending on the situation they're in. If they have had the handbag stolen, it's probably not necessary, and they can carry on with their business as they were intended. What I would say though is that having that peace of mind that somebody is ready to jump on those challenges the moment the alarm is raised gives you that comfort. I mean, I myself have actually been stuck in Saudi Arabia, and it wasn't that pleasant, but knowing that somebody was getting me a travel document, that's all I wanted to know, because I could stay where I was, but it's being dealt with.
Assaults on women in hotel rooms, you'll see that some of the 5-star properties are also perpetrators, if you will, or not exercising a duty of care to their guests. But what you'll find is that the upper end of the hotel food chain, if you will, have got extra security features in there. So they've got double locking doors, they've been well trained not to announce room numbers out loud, they might have key card lift access, they'll be more cognizant of where they're putting people. Because actually some of these motorway hotels, you've got people in annexes, not even in the main building, which I've been put in one of those before, and it was quite horrific. So I think if your wife, did you say,
yeah,
has got no option but to stay in these places, then I think what she needs to do is to try and insist on a room in the main building, above the ground floor, not right at the end of a corridor next to a fire exit, to take a device with her so that she can double lock her door, and if they announce a room number out loud, to challenge it as well, and tell her she's not a princess for doing so. Definitely. I think the most savvy travel managers and sort of TMCs realise that you can't have two, you've got to have all three. in terms of duty of care, cost and compliance. And quite often employees don't understand why they need to comply, so they like to go off piece, they like to collect their loyalty points, or they like to stay in their favourite place because it's got a pool or whatever. But if you can force them down the, well, it's a duty of care, we want to know where you are and that's why we need you on policy, if they can see that you're backing that up with action rather than just, you know, paying lip service to it, and you are actually asking where they're going and you're giving the right advice, then they're more likely to comply, and therefore you'll be able to drive better deals with your travel providers.
Business travellers?
I've been to the States twice since Trump got in, and I wouldn't say that the risk to me has increased because of that. I think the bigger risk to me is Brexit, because I'm used to popping around Europe and quite comfortable doing business in those cities, but actually as we start trading further afield, then I'm going to have to go to countries which are culturally more diverse, and we've seen what happens when you get cultural, legal and cultural restrictions or differences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a tick box exercise, and I don't actually think a lot of businesses understand where their responsibility lies and whose responsibility that person is. And I think it's something that, you know, when something goes wrong, the company will initially jump, but the moment they jump and they realise that actually there's nothing they can do, the family of that individual traveller jumps up and down very, very quickly, and it becomes a reputational issue. Because they will very, very quickly start pointing the finger and screaming from the rooftops to get that person back. And I think it's insurance doesn't cover everything, and it doesn't actually make it okay. But what you, as somebody sending somebody abroad, need to understand is, for that entire period, they are your responsibility. Now, they have a responsibility to themselves as well, but they are your responsibility. The reason they went was because of your business. Just because they went out and got drunk one night and ended up in a police station and had got beaten up in the process, they're still your responsibility. And there's training element before people go of them truly understanding, and I've been in a situation where we had to get 2 people out of prison who got drunk in the Middle East and were found 2 meters away from the front door of the bar and were picked up by the police. By the time we picked them up 4 hours later, they were black and blue. And there was nothing anybody could have done about that other than them actually wait until the car was there and they ran from the door and jumped straight in. But they were black and blue. They blamed the company for not having trained them that they weren't allowed to walk the street drunk. They'd never been told that piece of information. Now, whose responsibility is that, you could ask, to know that? It's research. And I think there should be a debrief every time somebody comes back from a business trip with HR or a report. These are the things that I came across, these are the things I had to deal with, to build up a file internally of the sorts of advice that those people can give, because you will always get good advice, and things that went wrong or little niggles. It's really important that the businesses take responsibility, but also learn from their staff that are making the trips. I think
I'm generalising, but I'm certainly very comfortable travelling around in Europe. I would think more if I was travelling somewhere further afield, but actually complacency is your biggest enemy. And so when I come to London, I don't plan so much. I take a lot of it for granted. I take all the risks that I know that I'm taking, like standing on a street corner and talking on my mobile phone, but it's a calculated risk. Whereas if I was travelling further afield, I would think twice about doing that. But that's where we say that nowhere is actually safe, and if you're complacent, then anything can happen to you anywhere.
Are there any questions?
Okay, yeah, so there's 2 points really. If you did a self-defense course today, that's not going to protect you in 2 weeks' time. It needs to be instinctive, so you need to be regularly practicing the moves. But actually, probably the reason that I didn't become a victim that day when I'd done a self-defense course the day before is because I was uber confident. I'd flattened a guy who was a 6-foot black belt with very little of a technique, which I felt very confident and pumped up about the next day. So actually, if you think you're going to be a victim, you're more likely to become a victim because you're acting and you're walking and your body language is saying, I'm a victim. So if you've got that extra confidence, you're less likely to be singled out. But if you are going to do self-defense, don't rely on one course that you did 6 months ago. You need to constantly practice the moves so that they're very instinctive to you and that they just come naturally. So if anything happens, you've got to show as an organisation that you took all reasonable steps to prevent something happening to your traveller. So that could be resources, pre-trip briefing or training. So the more that you can do, then the safer you're going to be. But this is not about legal or reputational damage limitation. It's about moral obligation. It's about the right thing to do. And I know that budgets are always in question, but trust me, it's a lot more expensive when something goes wrong. So when I would never advocate that you have a special policy for women. I don't want to patronise, I don't want to discriminate, but if there are specific things that are relevant to certain countries, then that information should be made available and people should know where it is. But this gets even more tricky when you talk about the LGBT community, for example, because you can tell when a woman's a woman. You can't tell if somebody is homosexual, for example. And with homosexuality being illegal in 70 plus countries, punishable by death in a number, it's really important that people understand where that information is and where that they can find it without even having to out themselves.
There should be I think, a standardised level of training in all businesses. Everybody that travels, you know, the number of us that have jumped on a plane, picked up the magazine and not listened to the safety briefing. Now, we've all done it. Completely understand why. Because we actually think that they're talking to the person that sat next to us that's never flown before. They're not. 70% of deaths, survivable plane crashes, those people were found with bruising here and here because they had no idea how to get out of their seat when they panicked, because they didn't listen. Because the first thing you do when you get told to take your seatbelt off is you do that, because it's the most common seatbelt. The bruising is them struggling to try and get out of the plane because they can't work out how to do it because they're ripping here. Okay? It's there for a good reason. The reason they say, when they say, look for your nearest exit in that safety briefing, what they're asking you to do is count the number of seats to that exit. Not just look at it and go, oh yeah, so. It doesn't help you. How many people in this room have ever actually checked the fire door on their floor in a hotel room? We do security reviews of hotels the entire time. On average, 20% of them are blocked or locked. Right? Now, yes, you can blame the hotel for that. But even when I'm on holiday with my family, not only do I walk up and find the fire door, but I push the bar too. I don't care if an alarm goes off. I want to know it's open. I want to know I can get my family out of it. In one hotel, the maps that they put on the back of the door, 2 corridors, fire exits at this end. When they did the last refurb, they got the boxes of maps the wrong way around. They were sending people down the other end of the corridor. Okay? Really simple stuff. Things like that, it doesn't matter, male, female, who's travelling, where you're travelling to, whether you're staying in London or staying in Port Harcourt. Doesn't matter. They're simple things that everybody should observe. And the last thing is, talking of travel insurance, how many people actually travel with their insurance number and haven't given it to anybody else? Everybody in this room. It's no use to you if you're passed out if you've got it. because nobody knows where it is, they don't know how to get to it. Somebody told me the other day, oh, it's on my phone. Great, your phone's locked. Next of kin, in a pocket, somewhere on you. Here's a telephone, in an emergency, call this number. That person should have your insurance number.
But I think I was just discussing with Carolyn before we came in this morning. Back in my days in Forte hotels, around 20 years ago, actually, we were talking about female business travel and what we can do to differentiate and things like that. And I think generally there is an understanding in hotels and in most businesses now where the element of privacy in a hotel has always been there, but never more so now. With the advent of social media as it is, and we are heavily reliant upon our brand, our reputation, so the opportunity to be able to inadvertently release anything about anybody, be it at a reception desk or via our social media, by reckless management of documents, anything like that, is paramount, and that's up to us to protect that. But what I do find interesting is the concept of not mentioning a room number and a name and that type of thing at check-in. We would like to ensure that that happens for every guest, actually. And whilst there is a conversation to be had about female business travel, absolutely. I've got a 19-year-old daughter at university. She's going to hopefully go off and teach abroad in 2 years' time. If that was a son, would I feel a little bit more comfortable about it? Probably yes. So there is definitely a conversation to be had about that. But what I often find is, whilst we might train people and provide guidance about how we best manage a guest security, whether they leisure, business, whoever they might be, male, female, is it all comes down to, again, and I'm not shirking responsibility, about the individual. Because we may offer that privacy at the desk, and you often hear in bars, in restaurants or in spas, oh, could you put that on room 123, Mrs. Taylor or Mr. Taylor? And it's immediately out there, despite the efforts of those around you that have done it. And like I say, that can come in any environment, and it's not necessarily because a drink's flown. It's just because you've walked in and said, "Oh, it's Mrs. Taylor, 123, going in the spa," and it only happens to be the wrong person. It only needs the wrong person to be able to hear it. So, but yeah, there are many elements of a hotel, how it operates, that can offer, I suppose, bespoke elements of security to female travellers. But me personally, I think we strive to achieve that for everybody, actually.
Sam?
I think, in the events industry, for us as event organisers, it's something that we need just to be aware of. It's a case of it's coming to the end of the event, we're looking around, we're trying to see who's left behind, who's ordered a taxi, who hasn't. If there looks like there's, two people have got, are talking to each other, but actually they don't really know each other. Does one of them feel insecure? What does one of them feel kind of sort of threatened? What's going to happen? So I think, for our staff, we're very much looking, and sort of surveying the scene at the end of the event to make sure that nobody feels in a vulnerable position. And then also making sure that actually people get home, that they've booked taxis. If they haven't, making sure that we wait. So one of our responsibilities is we're always the last person to leave. So we've made sure that everybody's got into a taxi, or they've gone home, or that they've left the premises, and they're all, accounted for in that way. Because I think that is one of the dangers, particularly when you're in a strange city and people haven't really pre-booked a taxi, or they don't really know what they're doing.
I'm rather uncomfortable with the concept, actually. I mean, for me, you're isolating a whole community of people in this kind of strange environment that is just, all vulnerable people together. I don't get the concept, actually. I think, coming back to my point I made earlier, I think we strive in this industry to provide as safe and secure places as possible, and that applies to everybody. So you'll find Carolyn referred to guest key controlled lifts. I mean, that applies in most hotels now of a standard. and that extends to guest bedroom corridors, and we have 308 cameras in this hotel alone. So all guest bedroom corridors, not quite the bedrooms, but the guest bedroom corridors have CCTV on it. So in themselves, they're quite secure environments, but this whole pooling of people, in fact, I mean, to some extent, there are some nice guys out there, and you're isolating them from somebody that actually may come to somebody's help and assistance. These nice, strong guys down the corridor, which they can't hear you, actually. So this kind of community, I don't kind of get it a bit. And in fact, it is a brand promise. If you were going to say we offer, be it a female-only business level room and floor, which is secure from the outside world, and you're often probably unable to deliver it, in fact, because if that hotel is fully booked with the exception of 10 rooms, which happen to be this unique set of rooms you've got in this room, I can guarantee they'll be sold to male, female, whoever wants them. So being able to deliver that brand promise operation is probably extremely difficult, actually, and you start to lose the confidence so immediately. I mean, what happens when a female in this secure environment comes out to find Mr. Robinson leaving his room, and it's like shock horror, there's a man in my floor, which is, I mean, the whole thing's a little bit odd, I find, and very difficult to deliver, I think.
And Nicole,
Sorry, 12 years ago, I only intended staying in the industry for 2 years, and that says a lot for why I'm still here, I suspect. But I find this industry, we are a very public-private place. So we have to treat this building and particularly the rooms as as people's homes. So we do a pre-employment screening, but we go kind of a step beyond that, and it's not just unique to Edwardian, but certainly we were one of the first. That we use things like electronic counter document scanners. So every person that is employed in this group, and I know 100% of it because my team do it, before they sign a contract, all of their identity documents are electronically scanned to ensure that they are authentic, and that's all internationals, and we're talking biometric passport decoders, and that's supported by dedicated training by Operation Trammel from Met Police, the counter documents, who we just had the whole team put through last week again. So there's quite a lot. There is an extensive programme of ongoing risk monitoring, actually, and that's not just at the point of employment, it goes beyond that as well. I mean, you can never say never. Obviously, our group alone employ 2,500 people. It's one of the industry itself is one of the biggest employers in the UK. There's an element of risk in it somewhere. You'll always have an insider somewhere that's had a bad day, that's made a bad decision. But I think there's a room attendant going into a bedroom. I mean, this is one thing I would advocate as well, is always ensure that your travellers use a room safe, and do not believe the urban myths and everything that is attached around room safes being tampered with, and we've got devices that can open them and all this type of stuff. We absolutely do have for when you forget your codes, but I can tell you that is 100% auditable. It's electronically auditable, not only out the safe, but also out the device that has been used. But the moment items are left outside of a room safe, that then invites opportunity, be it for insurers don't like it either, because as soon as something is outside of the safe, then you've got a limited capability of being able to get something back. But the point I was going to make about that is take things out of people's minds. We have a certain demographic of guests that leaves absolutely hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of property in their bedrooms, and our poor guys and girls, they go there every day and service these things, and nothing's touched. And we do have a lot of trust in people. We have to, because we just wouldn't allow them to go into a bedroom otherwise, and you have to start at a point of trust. But yeah, absolutely, there's a lot of not only pre-employment but ongoing screening that takes place.
I'm aware we
I mean, we would use Uber as a way of getting home, but we wouldn't do Uber Share. think that's one thing I would say. Airbnb, no, I think for the security of guests, we would always say a hotel would be safer.